Okay, so let's start the installation and setup for this particular project. So for this, we're going to be using Nextjs, and that will be the first step. So let's quickly drag this directory into VS Code, and what we just currently have here is just an empty directory. And let's quickly pull up our terminal. Okay, so the next thing is basically we're going to do npx create next app at latest. The name of our project, we're just going to call it colors clone. We want Typescript in this project. We're going to be using ESLint. We also want Tailwind CSS setup. So how we like to use the source directory? No. App router, yes. We like to customize the import, at least no. Okay, so at this point, our project should be installing, and we'll be back once the installation is done. Okay, so at this point, our Nextjs application is installed. So let's quickly move into colors and open this up in VS Code real quick, and we could close this instance and open this up. Okay, if you can see here, we have our Nextjs application already installed with the starter code and everything we need. So for this particular video, we're just going to be using frame motion for most of the animation on this particular project. So let's quickly install frame motion. So we're going to say npm install frame motion. We're also going to be installing coolors for our color manipulation, and also we're going to also install random color, which is going to help us to generate our colors. Okay, cool. So if you go to our package.json right now, we have these packages installed, frame motion and the other ones. Okay, cool. Okay, so for this particular project, we're going to be using Shadcn UI for our component library. And let's quickly go into the documentation and your installation process. So we're using Nextjs, and what we just need to do is, after installing our Nextjs application, which we already did, we have to install the package. So let's open up VS Code and paste in this particular command right now. So what we could do, we just paste Shadcn UI at initialize, and that should get us ready. Based on the documentation, it says it's gonna ask us some questions and what we basically want to use. Okay, let's quickly look at VS Code again and see what we have right now. Okay, so what style do you want to use? We want to use the default style. I think we could just use stone. The CSS variables no, initialize, and yeah. So at this point, Shadcn should be installing in our application. We successfully installed Shadcn UI in our application. So let's quickly run npm run dev. Let's run our server. Okay, our application should be running in localhost 3000. One thing we could do to confirm that Shadcn has been installed in this project, let's quickly add a button component, and I think automatically you should go into the component directory. You should have a button if this is successful. And let's quickly go into our app and take out most of this code we have here right now. We won't be needing them. Okay, cool. So we have our button installed. Let's quickly try to use the button here. Let's say on our home page, we just want to show the button we just installed. So let's import button, our component UI, and this button we're just gonna call this testing button. Let's format this properly, and yeah, cool. So we have Shadcn successfully installed in our application. Just to go through what we've done right now, we've actually installed Shadcn. We've installed our Nextjs project from scratch. We have CSS installed. We have also installed coolors, which is just a tiny tool, right? To manipulate colors and like to have conversions of colors. So it says colors is a tiny yet powerful tool for high performance color manipulation and conversion. I'll put a link to this particular repo in the video description. Okay, so for us to continue, let's quickly take a look at the application one more time. So we just have the landing page, which is the page where we see this SV image that is being animated with some frame motion, and we have some text and a button. On click of the particular button, you'll be routed to a new page, which is the generate page. Then on the generate page, this is where we are doing the color generation. Then once the color is generated, the user will be routed to this particular dynamic routes. Then we have the images, and we also have the color let. We also have some buttons here, which is just a dialog, and we also have another dialog which has a form for us to save our platelet, and we also have another dialog for exporting for particular color. And without wasting much time, let's quickly this UI component from Shadcn directly, so it will be easier for us to be able to integrate and work with this UI since they're already installed in our application. Okay, so for us to quickly do that, let's go back to Shadcn component, and I think we could just take this to the side and also do this. For this, we need to install the drawer, right? So we're using the drawer to show the modal on mobile. Let me quickly show how that works. So right now in our example here, let's try to see this in a mobile way. If we make this mobile and we try seeing a particular color, a quick view, you get to see this is actually coming out from the bottom instead of a modal, and this happens to all our dialogues, right? But if you go back to desktop mode and you try to view, they are all going to be like a regular dialogue. Okay, so just that little attention to details. We're going to be doing that. Install the drawer, and let's quickly take the code again and see. We need the dialogue. Do you want to override it? Yes. Let's install drawer, and let's quickly see. Okay, so let's quickly install the dialogue right now, and we also need to install form. So let's quickly install form, because we'll be using the form for saving a particular color platelet to our database on Supabase. So let's copy this real quick and also install this and install form. After installing form, we also need to install input. So I want us to do it at the beginning right now, so we just focus on just like building this stuff without worrying too much on trying to install later. Okay, so we're done installing form. Let's quickly install the inputs. So to install inputs, and I think next thing we need to install, let's install text area, and we're gonna say, so let's quickly copy this and install text area. And there's the faster way of doing this, right? So we could just say npm install. Next we want to install toaster, and we're also going to install the tooltip, and we're also going to install the toast, right? So let's quickly install this. This should be a faster way of installing the component we need here right now. I think at this point we should actually have all our components ready. So let's see toaster real quick. Okay, let's go to toast. Okay, cool. So we have toaster, tooltip, and toast all installed. So let's go into our component right now and see what we currently have. We have the button dialog, drawer, form, input label, text area, toast, toaster, tooltip, and I think we are ready to continue building. Cool. Okay, so let's quickly close this up, and okay, so the next thing I want to do, I want to set up the route for this particular application. So based on the example we currently have 3 different pages. So let's quickly try to sign in real quick, and let's continue with Google. After successful sign up, it's gonna route us to the home page. So let's quickly sign in this. We're actually logged in, and let's start the generator. So we have the home page, we have the generate page, and we also have this dynamic page that has been created once the color platelet is generated. So let's quickly do that. Cool. Okay, so right now we just have our home page already. So let's create a new page, and we're gonna call this our generate page, and inside here we're gonna have a page, right? And let's quickly create this page, and we're gonna call it page. Just put some dummy text, which is just gonna be generate page from now. Then the next thing we need to do here, we need to create the colors, the dynamic color page, right? And inside here we also need to create a slug. This is gonna be dynamic, right? And the slug is just gonna be a page. And let's quickly create this too. Let's just say this is just gonna be dynamic, or dynamic page. Cool. And let's quickly take a look at this. We have the generate page. You can hit the generate page and see the generate page text. And let's quickly try hitting the dynamic page. Let's just put, for example, let's just put 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so it says 404, right? So let's quickly see this. We have a colors directory and the slug. So the slug should be dynamic, right? And we need to rename this. And yeah, and at this point we should be able to access the page. Okay, cool. We have the dynamic page right now. Okay, so that should be it for our pages. The next thing we want to do right now, we want to actually add authentication to our application, because as you can see on this particular page, we have authentication here on our pages. We have our protected routes. If you go to the landing page and you're already logged in, you get to see the button. And let's see, for example, you sign out, right? And once you sign out, you don't see your avatar anymore. So you try to sign out, you have the text where it says sign in to use generator. Right, so you need to sign in to use the generator. So let's say, for example, you try hitting a color platelet. We have protected route, right? So you'll be thrown to the login screen where you need to sign in with Google or with your email and password. So let's go back to our landing page. So for us to do this, we are making use of Clerk auth, which kind of make it more very fast to like add authentication in your Nextjs applications. So let's quickly pull up Clerk documentation, and we could just say Clerk auth doc, and this is the documentation right now. We are working with Nextjs. Okay, cool. So let's quickly install this. So it says to get started with Clerk, use the SDK to your project, add the SDK to your project, then add the provider, and yeah. So let's quickly go back to VS Code and open up our terminal. So at this point, I want to add Clerk auth. Okay, so auth is being installed right now, and okay, so we have Clerk we have Clerk Nextjs wrapper installed right now. So let's quickly continue what we're doing. Let's take this to the side. And the next thing we need to do, we need to wrap the provider around our layout. So let's quickly go to our application and move into our layout, and we should be able to see our layout here. We just have some text here. We could quickly make use of the provider and just do this Clerk provider, and we're gonna wrap it around our whole application. And we're gonna say Clerk provider and copy all our HTML and our body into this part. Cool. The next thing, it says add authentication to your app. It says create a middle.ts. So let's quickly go to the root of our application. Let's create a middleware.tsx, right? And the is just gonna serve for handling the authentication with Clerk provider directly, right? So it says it allows the sign out user to access a specific. So let's say, for example, you want your users to be able to access a specific route. For our own case right now, we just want the users to be able to access just the base routes, right? So we can intercept the request from our middleware. So this basically means the base route. So we want signed in user to be able to access the base route. Okay, cool. We have our middleware. And now let's quickly go back to our application. That should be localhost. Okay, open up the localhost real quick. Okay, so it says missing Clerk secret key. Let's go back to documentation. So let's quickly open this real quick. Go back to documentation, go back to home, and go back to Clerk. And I think we're already signed in, so we could just go back to dashboard directly. So quickly, let's go back to dashboard and create a new application. And we're just gonna call this colors clone. That will be the name of our new application, and we just want to set up Google and email authentication. So for your own use case, you could use maybe phone number or LinkedIn or Twitch, like depends on what you actually want to use. Just for simplicity, we're gonna be going with just Google and email auth. Okay, cool. So it's showing us what we need to do here right now, right? We just need to copy this. Since we're working with Nextjs, let's just copy our Clerk publish key, right? So let's copy this and our Clerk client key and let's go into VS Code, right? So what we need to do next, we need to create a environmental variables, right? So we could just call this our env.local, and we're just gonna paste our variables here right now. So these are the variables that are being used by Clerk to authenticate us and like to authenticate the user, which is the secret key and the publish key. So if we go back to our host, we should be able to see, let's just wait for our server to restart, and we could just take this one and take this one out. We don't need them. Okay, cool. So at this point, we already have Clerk on our application. Just to confirm, let's try hitting the generate page right now. Cool. So we can actually hit the generate page, because at this point, we already told the middleware to protect all the pages in our application apart from the base route, which is what we are using, which is just our local host, right? And let's also see if we could actually access the dynamic page, which is going to serve for our colors. We won't be able to do that, right? Okay, cool. So we could say Clerk has been installed in our application, and we could go back to doing just one more step. So the next step of what I want to do, I basically want to create, because if you notice, if we hit a particular page, we are being thrown to this URL, which is not in our application. Right now, this is actually not in our application. It says Clerk is in development mode, right? So we want to be able to access this in our application directly in our own route inside our application, not some other application hosted somewhere. So for us to quickly do that, we're just going to create 2 pages. I think for this, we could just create 1 page, and we're just going to call it, this is going to be our sign in page, sign-in-in. This is our sign in page, and our sign in page is just going to have a regular page, CSS, and we could just say, oh, this is just going to be our sign in page. Okay, so we'll also do the same thing for our sign up page. So we're going to say this is just going to be sign up page.tsx. Cool. And this is just going to be page.tsx. And let's just quickly say, let's copy what we have here right now. This could work for us. Okay, so we just have page, and cool. So one last thing we need to do, we need to tell Clerk, right? We need to tell Clerk hot that we actually want to handle our sign in and our sign up page by ourselves, right? And how you do that is also through your environmental variable. Let's quickly pull up the environmental variable again, and okay, let's scroll to this part, and we're just gonna set this up. Say, okay, so we're just gonna say the next public auth sign in URL should just be our sign in page. The next public Clerk sign up URL right? It should just be our sign up, and after signing, it takes us back to the base and takes us back to the base. Cool. Okay, so at this point, let's hit our application again and see what we currently have. Okay, so let's try hitting the generate page, which at this point is a dynamic page. Generate. Cool. Says it takes us to the sign-in page, and mind you, we just have page here, so let's quickly go up and fix that real quick. What we're supposed to see there is the sign-in page, right? So we could just quickly say our sign-in page. We're just going to import our sign-in page from Clerk directly. So basically, Clerk gives us some components which we could work with in our application, right? And as you can see right now, we just have the sign-in page and our Google and sign in and our email sign in. Very easy to do, right? And quick. So we're also going to do the same thing for our sign up page. Well, for our sign up page, we're going to be importing the components called sign up from Clerk auth. And let's just quickly do that, and let's import this. This will be coming from Clerk auth Nextjs. Okay, cool. So let's go back to home again and localhost 3000, and this is what we currently have now. If you say the dynamic page, we are being redirected to the sign-in page. Cool. So we could say authentication has finally been set up in this application. So if you say continue with Google, right, and you try logging in, we should be able to log in once we are authenticated by Google. Okay, so it says page not found. Okay, let's quickly try to debug this. Okay, so when we try logging in, we are getting an error. Let's try fixing that. So we'll go back to our sign up page here, and what we currently have is signup.csx, which is directory, and that should be sign up. And I think at this point we should be able to log in. Sign in with Google, and we are signed in, right? So let's quickly go back to our base page. We could quickly import use section from Nextjs, and in our application here, we're just gonna use it. So use section, right? And we can actually take out some values from there, and some values we could destructure out is we could destructure is signed in, and we could also destructure is loaded. So what we're trying to do, I just want to show you how Clerk works. So we're gonna say if is signed in, if the user is signed in, we're gonna show a text of signed in. Else we're just gonna show sign out, right? Just an example. And let's format this page and see what we currently have. Okay, so we get this error. It says use section is not a function. Let's quickly make this a client component, so this actually works. Let's refresh this page, and so yeah, it shows we are signed in, right? So let's again, it's showing sign out, then we are signed in. We already signed in, right? Okay, so currently we just have authentication already set up in our application, and if we try hitting the sign-in page now, it should be routed back to the base page. If we try hitting the generate page, we should be able to go to the generate page because we have authentication set up right now. Okay, cool. So that's just how you set up authentication with Clerk. So the next thing we want to do, remember, we're also using Supabase for our database. So let's quickly set up Supabase too. So there's a way you could actually set up Supabase with Clerk auth directly. So we could make use of Supabase as our database, while Clerk ought to just be our authentication provider. Now, mind you, Supabase actually has Supabase auth, but for this particular video, we're just going to be using the auth from Clerk auth and not from Supabase. So currently, let's just create a new project on Supabase. Let's create in this organization. We're going to call this, let's call this colors, right? Colors clone, and type a password. Let's just choose any password, and let's just create a new project. Okay, so cool. So we have our Supabase application set up. So the next thing we need to do, we need to set up our databases, right? And let's quickly go into the table editor. Okay, so let's just wait a little bit. Our project is being set up, and we'll be back. Okay, so cool. We have our Supabase application set up right now. So let's quickly create a new table. Okay, so for this table, we're going to call this particular table, we're going to call it our platelet, because this is where we're going to be saving all the platelets for a particular user. And description, we could leave it opened. Our row level security, we're going to set that up later. So what we need right now, we need an ID, right? We need an ID. We need a created at. We could also add another column, which is just going to be the title. And we're just going to make this text and add on that column. This is just going to also be our description for the particular platelet that is being saved. And this is also going to be text. and let's use varchar. Okay, also we're gonna say our colors, right? Because we have to save our colors, so we could just make this one also varchar, and that should give us what we currently want. Then lastly, we are gonna create a user ID, right? There's gonna be underscore user ID. So the user ID is just gonna be the particular authenticated user from Clerk clients, right? From our Clerk provider directly. And how you could actually do that, we could save this for now. Okay, let's quickly add a type here. Let's just say this should just be, let's make it a text for now and save for now. Okay, so we've been able to create our table. So once the next step we need to do, let's quickly go into our SQL editor, and in SQL editor we are gonna say, let me quickly make this. In our SQL editor, we're just gonna run this SQL command from the documentation directly. We are trying to create a new function, right, that requests for the user ID, and we are creating it in our SQL editor directly. So if we run this right now, it's basically a function to retrieve the request user ID. So now if we go back to our table editor, and we go back to our platelets, and now we're going to use the function in this particular place. We're going to say we want to edit this column, and this column is just going to be a text. Let's just make this text. Then the default value would be the function we just created in our editor, right? And this is just going to be it, request user ID. Cool. And we could save this. Okay, so successfully created this particular table, right? So let me make this wider so we can see. So we have the ID, we have the created ads, we have the title, we have descriptions, we have the colors, and we have the user ID, because you need to be authenticated before you'll be able to save a color platelet. So one more last thing we need to do in Supabase here, we need to add row level security to our table. And for us to do that, we are just going to say the row level security, right? We're just going to create a new policy. And what we are going to do straight up is for inserts, right? We want to be able to allow only authenticated users to be able to insert into this particular table, right? And we check, right? We check basically is just going to run our function we created, SQL function we created previously. So the request user ID has to be equals to the user ID, right? So if you save this, okay, let's name this. So just say insert platelets. Cool. And we could save this particular policy. Let's create a new policy again. And for this particular time, what we are going to be creating something similar, but at this time it's just going to be also using the request user ID. But we're not going to be using the insert, we're going to be using the select. So we want our users to be able to select or to be able to fetch their particular already saved. So let's just say select, let's name this select platelets. Cool. And save policy. Okay, so the next thing we also need to do here, we need to get our JWT secret key from Supabase so we could set it up in our Clerk dashboard. And for us to do that, let's quickly go to settings, our project settings, then we should have API. And okay, so we are just going to copy the JWT secrets. Let's quickly review this and copy it. And we are going to go to dashboard for our particular dashboard and navigate to our JWT template. So in our JWT template, we're going to create a new template, and for this template we're going to say it's going to be a Supabase template because we're already using Supabase, right? Then we are going to say that under the signing key we are just going to paste in the secret key we collected from Supabase, right? And we don't have to change any other thing here. And let's save changes. Okay, cool. We have our JWT templates for Supabase already set up with Clerk. Yeah, so I think at this point our application should all be connected. So now we need to do one more thing for us to be ready to make use of Supabase in our application. Let's quickly install the Supabase, npm install supabase.js. Okay, so we have Supabase already installed. So let's go back to Supabase again and look for our keys. And the first key we need here, we need the Supabase URL. Let's go to our environmental variable to do that. So we need to let's quickly set up our Supabase. So we need to get the Supabase URL and our Supabase key, anonymous key. So let's quickly get that. So this is the key, and in your own case, right, you'll be making use of the key directly. Then for your Supabase URL, this will be our Supabase URL. And yeah, that's cool. So at this point we already have Supabase Supabase set up in our application. We have our Clerk auth also added in our application. So let's go to creating our client component that we could use to fetch data directly from Supabase. Okay, so for us to actually do that, I think let's open this up properly and take this out so we could see it properly. Okay, so the next thing we need to do real quick here, we just need to create a new directory in the base here, which we could just call this Supabase. It's gonna hold our Supabase values and Supabase, and inside our Supabase we're gonna create a client, right? So we could say this should just be create clients.csx. So now this particular client is just gonna serve for our Supabase and also our Clerk authentication, because we need to tell Supabase that we want to make use of Clerk as our authentication provider and to fetch our data. Let's quickly import our create clients from our Supabase.js, and so I'm just gonna paste some code here and go through what's happening here. So currently we just have a function which is returning our create client from Supabase, and we are trying to access our URLs in our environmental variable. Remember, we set them up here already, right? And we're just gonna come down here and say we're gonna call this our client, right? Client is gonna be equals to the Supabase client. Now it says Clerk does not exist on the window type. So for us to fix this, remember we're in a Nextjs application. We don't have access to the window objects on the server, so let's just create a type, just take away that error. So this is a type window Clerk to any. Okay, so for us to be able to use this across our application, let's quickly export this, and we should be able to use this in our application right now. Okay, so at this point I think we already have Supabase and Clerk auth connected, right? So I think we'll be seeing how that actually works together when we start building out the application. I just want to take our time to work on this first before we start working on the UI, right? Just to give you the clear understanding and of how you could actually integrate Supabase with Clerk. Then we jump into building the UI. One more last thing we could do here, because if we try accessing these values right now, we don't have types, right? We don't have types for each and every of our values. I think for that we are gonna do that in the later chapter of this particular tutorial. So let's just move on and go back to our landing and start building out our UI. Okay, so I think we're done here. We could close this out. We're also ready for our dashboard. We could also close this out, and let's quickly start building out our UI. Okay, for us to do that, let's quickly see what we're gonna do. If you go to the already hosted one, so in the landing page we just have an header, and also we have this particular page and this animated SVG here, right? So let's quickly build that very fast. Okay, so let's quickly build that out real quick. So we'll come into our component, and inside our component, let's just create a new file. We're gonna call this our header, right? And our header is just gonna be a basic header. Let's rename this to header, and we are gonna say header, and also we're gonna import the user button from Nextclark, right? And let's just put it here too. So this is just a component exposed from Clerk auth. Let's refresh it again, and now we're gonna make use of this header component inside our layout, right? Because it's gonna span across our pages. So yeah, right here we're just gonna say header, and we're just gonna quickly import this from we're gonna import this, and let's quickly move this to this part and move this to this part, and let's see this. Okay, let's refresh the page and see what we have here. So we have some errors. What's the error? It says addition field. Okay, cool. Let's go back to our header, and our header we just have this. And okay, so for our header we're just gonna do this, and basically what we're doing here, we're saying we want to get the logo from our assets. So let's quickly go to where we are currently, and just say let's just create a new directory. We're gonna call this our assets. So we have our assets. So this particular asset we're using across the application will be available in the video description too. So it says does not, because it doesn't have props, so you just need to import image from Nextjs. Let's import image from Nextjs, and let's go back to our page and see what we currently have. Okay, so I'm just gonna quickly drag in our assets into this particular page. You'll also be able to have a link for this particular asset if you want to code along, right? So we have access to link, our images, our logo, and let's see what we currently have. Let's refresh the page. If it doesn't work, let's restart our server, and let's go up here and restart our server. So what we currently have. Okay, let's go back to our header and see what we have right now. It says we just have a style of padding of 4, absolute background of white, and z-docs of 10. Okay, so at this point you might not be able to see your header. Okay, let's go back to our base page and let's reload the page and see what we currently have here. So we have an error that says hydration failed. So let's quickly go back to our layout and see what we currently have. Oh, there's an error. This isn't supposed to be here. This is supposed to be on top of our children props and inside the body tag. So if we refresh the page now, we should be able to see the header. Cool. Okay, so we've been able to add up the header. So we have the logo, which takes us to the home page, and we also have this particular nice drop down from Clerk auth to undo our authentication, like signing out or managing account and other stuff. Just with a line of code, just with this line of code user button, we were able to add this to our application. And this only shows up when the user is signed in. So if I sign out right now, it goes away, right? And it shows that the user is already signed out. Cool. And you can remember we already set this up to monitor our sign-in state, which is signed out right now. So let's hit the sign-in page again. Let's just sign in, and so we could continue what we're working on. So we're going to continue signing in with Google. Okay, so currently we just have the header, and let's start working on the home page. So for us to work on the home page, let's just quickly open up the home page right now. And we have, this should be our home page, and where we just have the test button. So we're just going to take this all out. And the next thing we're going to say, we're just going to say this should be, let's quickly break this so we can see this properly. I want this page to be a flex page. I think we could take out this class already, and we are going to make this a padding of 24, justify center, and okay, that works for us. So the next thing we need to do, we need to set up another div, which is just going to hold our text, and we could actually make this 2 divs. One is going to be for our SVG and one is going to be for our text, right? Then inside our text, we're just going to say an H1, right? That says the text of the super fast platelet generator. We should be able to see it right now on the page right now. Okay, cool. Super fast generator, and we're just gonna give it a class of, since we're using Tailwind CSS, and let's break this down. It's gonna be a text of 2.25 rems, but when it's on large, it's gonna be like super large. Okay, cool. Let's continue. We also have margin X to place it in the center, font black to be font weight of 900, text center, and margin button of 30 pixels. Then beneath this, we're also gonna put a p tag, which is just gonna hold the text of to create a perfect platelets or get inspired by thousands of beautiful color schemes, right? And this is just gonna take a class. This is just gonna take a class of large margin bottom, margin text with a lighter dark color, and text at center. Okay, so I think that works for us, and let's just see it one more time. So these are all in the center, and let's go ahead working on this. Now the next thing we need to do, we need to also add the buttons, right? So we could quickly add on that inside here, and we could just call these buttons just to identify it. And what we are going to say, we're going to create 2 different buttons. So the first button is just going to be having the class of, okay, so what we want to do, we want to show the 2 different buttons, right? And for us to do that, we need to make use of the values from is signed in. We have to make use of the value from Clerk auth, right? And let's just create a button here. Let me show you how we could do that. So we have a button from Shadcn, right? And we could just say this could be a button, and this button is just gonna be start the generator, right? And this our button is just gonna style this for a class of this. Okay, we have an error and we need to close this real quick. Okay, cool. Let's see what we currently have, and we should have a button on our page. Okay, cool. So we have a button that says start the generator, and for when you over the particular button, we just want to change the background color to this same color right here, and that works for us. And we could also say this should have the height of this button should have the height of 46 pixels, and a padding left and right of 21 pixels, and the margin top and bottom of 12 pixels, and make it rounded. Let's see what we currently have here, right? Okay, cool. And the next step, we need to also add the second button, and for us to just do that, so we could so I could show you what we really want to do here. So we want to say something similar to what we said before. So if it's signed in, right? If our user is signed in, we just want to show the button that says start the generator. Else, if the user is not signed in, we're going to show the button that says that says sign in to use generator, right? So let's just quickly copy this and paste it here, and also paste the second one here, and this should be sign in to use the generator, sign in to use generator. Okay, I think that works for us. Now let's take this out real quick, format document, and you should be able to see two different buttons based on the state. So let me show you this again. Let's refresh the page one more time. You see there's a start, there's a unload of the page, right? Is signed in is false. That's why we are getting this glitch right now happening. So for us to fix that, the Clerk value here also expose is loaded, right? So we're gonna use is loaded and say if the user is signed in and is loaded, which is a boolean, right? And is loaded is which is also a boolean. That is when we are gonna show the right button, so we don't get that glitch, right? And let's just refresh this page, and cool. Okay, so the next thing we also need to do here, we're done with the buttons, and this button is supposed to take us to the generate page, right? So when you click on it, it should take us to the generate page. And for us to do that, we're just gonna make use of the link and the link component from router, right? To try to push the user to the generate page. If the user clicks on this, then for the sign in to use generator, once you click on it, we want the user to be taken to the sign in page. Okay, so let's quickly test this and see what we currently have. So we have just one button showing on the page, and at this point the user is signed in, right? And if you click on start the generator, it takes you to the generate page. Cool, so that works. And let's just sign out and see what happens here. Signing out, the user is signed out, and the text we see this time is sign in to use the generator. And if you click on sign in to use the generator, it's supposed to take you to the sign in page. Okay, let's see where this is supposed to take us to. Take us to the sign in page, and yeah, cool, that works. Nice. Okay, so we need to add another button, since these are just our authenticated buttons, and we should add another button that's just gonna say explore. This button basically is just gonna say explore trending platelets, and we are gonna use similar styles, and we're just gonna say class name of this is just gonna have a class name of text black, full height of this, and padding of y and top. Yep. Okay, so we could say this should be a variant of outline. Okay, so we have two buttons, and this is just gonna be like a dummy button for us, right? While this is the one we're using to like do most of the actions here on the page. Okay, so I think we're done adding the buttons, and we could just collapse this for now. We have more room on the page. Okay, so the next thing we need to do real quick, we need to bring in our SVG, and I think before we do that, let's quickly style the main container of this. We're gonna see this item, right? We're just gonna put appearance here that we want it to act as the wrapper around the whole page, right? Around the two different div we have here right now. And we're just gonna do some little calculations to get a particular width, which is just gonna be width of 100 minus this value, then plus 180 pixels, right? And yeah, I think we can remove this justify between and just make it justify around to see the effect right now until we have our SVG on this page. Okay, so let's just quickly go ahead and do that. So this is our content. Let's just call it contents. This could just be content, then this is just gonna be our SVG. Our SVG here. Cool. So we copy our SVG. We should also get access to the link in the video description. Okay, so we just have our SV and also our text. Now this is in the center, right? This is kind of wrong. So let's quickly go back to the parents, and we're gonna say this is flex of column. We want this to be on large. We want this to be the flex of row. This should be a row. Then let's click. Okay, I think we're just gonna say large, then column dash reverse, and take out this breakpoint. And let's quickly see what we have here. Okay, still on one line. There might be a problem with what's happening here right now, and this solution would be because the only problem will be because of what we're doing here. Should this particular width should only be for our text, right? And this SVG is gonna stay outside of this particular one where we have the width and where we have this calculated width. Yeah, I think that should work for us since we already have flex. Let's set this, and our SVG is supposed to be here. Now this is actually working the way we want it to work, but we might not be able to see the SVGs yet because we don't have like a predefined width for this container. So let's just style this This is just gonna be like some basic styles. We're just gonna set the width, and the width is just gonna be a width of 6.6 pixels percent, and margin bottom and this and that. Yep. So let's quickly see this. Cool. So we have our SVG and also our landing. So let's go back to the hosted one again and check something. Or just want to confirm these buttons. Our buttons look they're looking very long, or buttons are looking very large. So let's just quickly go back and fix this, because if you see the completed one, we have shorter buttons, and let's go back and fix that. So we have our buttons. Let's quickly go accessing our buttons again and see what we have here. And so our buttons are looking very, let's fix that real quick. For us to fix that, let's quickly go back to this parent holding each of our buttons, and we're just gonna say we're gonna add a width here right now and say this should be a width of, we will give a value of like 260 pixels, and we're gonna place them in the center, and that should work for us. Refresh our page real quick, and we have our buttons similar to what we currently have here. Now if you look at the original one again, when you refresh the page, we have an animation happening to our text, right? There's an animation happening to our text, like a drop down animation happening to this container, and also we're going to add an animation to this SVG. Okay, for us to add an animation, remember we're making use of Framer Motion, which you already installed at the starting of this application and starting of this particular project, right? So let's just go out here and say, let's just create a new file. We're going to call this variants, right? So we want to use some variants to just call it a TS file, a variant.ts, and we just need these two variants right now. We need two variants, which is number one, the fade down animation variants and the blur button variants. Because if you go back to this animation again, if you go back to this page, you see the button has a different animation compared to the text. So let's quickly add the animations to our component here. Okay, for us to do that, let's go back to our page. And our page right now, we're gonna say this is already a client component, right? And we're gonna go down to the parents holding our content here, and we're gonna convert this to a motion component. If you don't have experience working with Framer Motion, I think you should check out my other videos. Check out my other videos on Framer Motion. I have a full playlist on Framer Motion where we break down each and every concept about Framer Motion. So let's import this. The auto import is not working for us right now. So we're gonna import motion from Framer Motion, and let's put this here so we could see this properly. And the particular variant we're gonna be using right now is just gonna be a particular. So the particular variant we're gonna be making use of here right now is just gonna be something similar to what we already have here. Yes. So this takes in our staggering children, and our staggering children is just gonna be set to, we can set them to 0.15, right? And let's format this properly. So what we're doing, we're just trying to copy this particular structure of the object we have here, because if you see, we have the hidden and we have the show, right? And this, if it's just the parents wrapping each and every item inside this particular container to give us that drop down animation for each of the values. So now with that, we can now quickly come here and say convert our h1 also to motion component, motion.h1, and our variance is just going to be fade variance, animation variance, fade down animation variance, and we are also supposed to use this on our paragraph too. Yeah, and we're just gonna say this should also be using that the same variance, but you have to convert this to a motion component for it to work. Let's format our code, and we should have that sliding animation right now. We should have the clean animation. Now let's see this in a wider screen. We refresh the page. Okay, doesn't seem to work, so let's debug it together. We have our paragraph motion component already installed in our application. We have motion imported from Framer Motion. We have our wrapper, which is wrapping around this particular text, and our children variants. And okay, yeah, one more thing is missing here. So if you set a variant, you need to make use of the initial property, right? And initial property at this point in our application is just gonna be set to hidden. Yeah, that's amazing. And we're gonna say animate. It's gonna animate on show. Yeah, so I think at this point we should be able to debug that error that we have right now. Yeah, I think we've debugged it, and we could just add one more value. We could just say viewports is just gonna be equals to once is just set to true, and also rename this to hidden. Yeah, let's see what we currently have. Let's make this larger. Couldn't. Okay, now let's see this. Nice. So once we reload the page, we have a drop down animation. 1, 2. Interesting. Okay. So we've been able to add the animation to the text. So let's go down to the buttons and add the animation for the buttons too. So for the buttons, I think it's gonna be very straightforward for each of the buttons we have in our application. For us to do this, we're just gonna say motion, right? Dot. We just make a motion dot button, and it's just gonna take in our initial to hidden, animate to visible, transition, variant, and import this from our variants. Yeah, so I think we could just reuse this across all our buttons, and we should have the next button here. Okay, cool. So we're just gonna use motion dot button directly. The motion component exposed from Framer motion. Yep, and we also need to do this for the last button, the one we have with the outline, and let's just do that for this too. Let's say this should just be initial, and I think that should be the wrong button. The button we're trying to target is this guy here, and let's take him out and say we just want a button. Yeah, throws error. Fine. We're just gonna, this is gonna be motion dot button. That should fix our error, and I think we are good. It's the outline. At this point, we won't be using Shadcn button anymore, so let's just use a normal regular HTML button. Cool. So if we format this right now, and I think we shouldn't have an error. Why do we have an error? Okay, cool. So that's out. Okay, so we reload the page. Let's see the animation again. Cool. So we reload the page. We have the text coming up, coming down, and we have our button showing up here. So if you notice, the buttons are actually delaying in a different way, right? Because we are adding different delays, right? So this one comes up, delays for like 0.5 seconds. Then this delays for 0.8 seconds. Yeah, I think that's it for this particular animation. So I think at this point, we could focus on this. And let's quickly take this back here, and now for us to animate these values, I think one particular animation we could just add here, very fast animation, right? We could just say, let's convert the parent to a div. Let's convert the parent to a motion div, and the motion div, right, we're just gonna say initial is just gonna be equal to opacity of 0. So what it means is you're not going to see this anymore on the page. Let's refresh this page, and you shouldn't be able to see it. Yeah, it's going to be opacity of 0. You can't see it, right? Then on animate, we just want to animate this value to the opacity of 1. So let's format this again and see what we currently have. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let's see it in a bigger screen and see what we currently have here. So the start of application, you don't see it, it just comes up, right? Okay, I think that works for the parent animation, like the container wrapping this particular SVG. Now if you see the hosted one, right, the one we already have hosted, it's actually animating through each different values, right? And so how can we actually achieve this? I think that's the next thing we'll be doing now. So we'll be trying to animate these values, and we are going to be using the UseAnimate hook from Framer motion to achieve this. So the UseAnimate hook from Framer motion says it basically gives you an animate function, right, with scope skeletons and automatic cleanups. It says it provides a way of using the animate function as scope to the elements within your component, right? So for our other animations we have here, we made use of the motion component, which is this motion.div, motion.paragraph, or motion.button. But for us to want to animate this value for the one we have on local, we'll be making use of the UseAnimate value. And yeah, I think this should be straightforward for what we want. So it exposes two values, right? The UseAnimate hook exposes two values, the scope and the animate. And you could use the scope. The scope is just a reference to the particular container that is scoped, right? And the animate is just a function you use to animate the properties. Yeah, I think with that, just go back to code, and I think we could also close this for now. Let's just focus on localhost. Okay, so to animate this, let's take this to the side and go up to our application and close this. I think we could just close the second one just to make this little neat. Our SVG is just on this page directly. Okay, we could just do this now. We need to import the UseAnimate hook, right? The UseAnimate hook from Framer motion, and we're just gonna say it exposes two values, right? Like I said, which is the scope and also exposes the scope, and also exposes a function which is animate. You could use to animate your components. Yep. So we have UseAnimate imported. Now let's have a breakdown of how we are going to do this animation right now. First off, let's quickly take the scope. Like I said, the scope is the reference to the div. Let's just set the ref of this particular component to be, let's set the ref to this particular div to be scope, right? So we have scope, and so what this means is every value inside this particular div we'll be able to access the values with our UseAnimate function. So now if you see what we currently have here, we just have it's larger. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different colors, right, which are just static right now. So we won't try to animate the values as time goes by, right? So for us to do that, we are going to be using the use effect to achieve that, right? And before we do that, we need to create a new function. For simplicity, I'm just going to put a function here, right? And this function, what the function does is to animate the random colors. And I think we're just going to put this also up here, right? So what this function does to get random color, we're just making a value that gets random color, right, to the string of 16, and it just returns a particular color for each of the iteration, and we're using a while loop that sets to true. So why we're using a while loop here is because we want this to be an infinite loop, right, that generates color in every iteration. Then we are awaiting, right, for each of the animation to run. Then we are changing the fill of this particular SVG, because if you go down here, you actually see that we are targeting the fill property, right? So if you check the class name now, we have first, we have second, we have third, and we have fourth. So these are the values we'll be using to access the animates. Those are the values we'll be using to access our animation from our animate function here. Cool. And so we're just going to set up a use effect. So the reason why this is like this is just to make it reusable, right? So what we're doing here, we're calling the first function. So the function, right, this animates with random colors, takes in a value, which is a target. It takes in the first value, which is first, takes in the second, takes in the third, takes in the fourth, takes in the fifth. So let's quickly import use effect and import, yep, takes in the values, then it just makes a random color, right, and animates your values of the fill property of each of these values we already identify by the class name, right? So we access the fourth, we access the fifth, and this is just going to be an infinite loop since we're using the while loop to achieve this. Yeah, I think with that we should be able to get the animation, and as you can see, this is changing, and this is amazing. So now we have a duration of 0.3, we have a delay of 0.4. We could do something here. We could say a delay of 0.9 just to see how the animation, how we could change the values. Let's refresh this page real quick. You see how slow it is changing. Okay, changing between each different colors, and I think we could just leave back our value. What we have is 0.4. Interesting. Okay, so we have our animation working on the landing page. Let's quickly jump into the generator page. So let's take this to the side, and so working on the generator page should be quite easy. And let's just go to the generator page. Okay, so there's an error which says scope provided but no element detected. Okay, let's go back to our animation. There should be a problem with our animation right now on this page. Let's quickly see what's happening here. Let's format this one more time and see. Okay, so we're making a while loop, we're animating. So once we leave the page, right, this basically kind of sets or sends our application into an infinity loop, because each of these our values won't be available anymore, right, on the page or in our DOM. So let's quickly fix that. For us to fix that, we need to say, I don't want to run this animation only if the scope, right, if the scope, the occurrence is available, and only then should we animate, right, with the target and the fill color and all. Now if you leave it this way, this will send your application into an infinite loop, because this is an if statement inside a while loop. So this our particular loop will always be true. So this will send your application into an infinite loop. So they will just put an else here, right? It says else we want to just break the animation. Cool. I think that way now we could actually fix that error we have there. Now let's go back to landing. Okay, cool. And start generator. Yeah, cool. So I think we fix that, and they are not 6 days. Okay, cool. I think I could make this a little smaller and bring this here. Yeah, so we'll have more room for our generator page. Okay, so we are inside the generate page right now. When we click on generator, we want to come to this page, show some spinner on this particular page, then redirect the user to a new route which is containing the new color, right? That's actually quite easy to do. So let's do that. So on this particular page, we are going to, first off, we're going to create a use effect, right? A use effect. So this use effect is just going to be on this page. So when this particular component mounts, okay, let's import this from use effect. Amazing. So once this page mounts, we want to make use of the use router from next navigation, because we have to make this component a client component, so we can make use of the use navigation. So just say use client, and so once you come on this page, we are gonna do some things here. Once you come on the page, right, we want to navigate you to, okay, so this is not spelled correctly, so we have navigate. So we want to navigate you to, we want to push you to, let's say, to the dynamic route, which at this point is called color. Then we have let's just say 1 2 3 4 5. Okay, amazing. So let's go back to our home page. Okay, so we are in the base routes and start the generator. We come here and we are routed to this page very fast, right? So it says page cannot be found. Now, the reason why this is a 404 page, simply because our route, remember, is called colors, right? Not color. And let's refresh this page real quick, and we should have access to, okay, let's go back here and start the generator. Automatically takes us to the color page. So we're on the dynamic page right now. So that is just the base of what we want right now. So for the JSX, we are just gonna make a very little spinner, and we don't have to do something too fancy. We'll just make use of Tailwind CSS to undo the animation, right? Just use CSS. We're going to use Tailwind classes and the animation from Tailwind directly, just to show a particular animation here. And we're going to make this a height of full, right? So it shows across the whole screen. And let's close the div real quick. So we have a background of white, a width of screen, flex, and a height of 100 view height. Cool. Let's refresh this real quick and see what we currently have here. So there's an error. It says div is not closed. This, and I think this shouldn't be an error for us. Okay, let's go back to the home page. Okay, so let's just take out one of the divs, div and div class, and okay, so this is the error. Cool. No, don't worry, seen the error. So we just say return. We're gonna return a JSX, right? And make sure we close the tag, else it's gonna throw errors. Okay, format this guy, and error should go away at this point. Okay, so we have the spinner showing up on this page, and let's go back here. Let's take away our navigator push. So let's refresh this page again. Let's go back here and see this on the generate page. Okay, start generator. We have this guy happening here on the full page loading. Then for some seconds we generate the color here, then take you to the next page. Okay, so let's just work on that. So for us to work on that, right, let's quickly create a new variable. We're gonna call this we call this generate random color, and our generate random color, right, colors is just going to be equals to our random color. So if you remember in the beginning of the application, when we're installing npm packages we're going to be using, we installed random colors, right? I think we just quickly pull up documentation here. So random color.js, and let's see what it does. So the random color.js is just a tiny script for generating color, right? And this is how we use it. Use it in a variable. We already installed it, and you could pass in some values, the formats, and for what we just need, we just want to pass in something very simple, right? Passing an object, which is just gonna be hue. It's gonna be equal to random. Now we could just make this random. And next, we also want to pass the count to 5, since we want 5 colors, right? We want to generate 5 colors. And next, we're also going to pass in the luminosity. Our luminosity for this is just going to be random. Let's quickly import random colors. Okay, let's say import random color from random color. Okay, so we have this. So let's just try to log the colors we have right now. So let's say generate random colors. Let's just log this. What will be the values? So format this real quick, and we're on the generate. Let's reload this page and see what we have. Okay, as you can see right now, we have with our console ninja right now, we've been able to see 5 different colors, right? So we've been able to generate 5 different colors at this point. And so the next step is just to navigate the user right now. So let's quickly go back to the generate page where we have our loader, and we're just gonna say push, and let's just pass in this variable right now. The variable we have right now is just generation color, which is just a string, right? So let's quickly see this. Let's make this larger, and so you go back to the landing page and let's refresh the page one more time. Okay, so we have a start the generator, we get to the generate page, then cool, routed to this particular dynamic page. Now if you look at if you look at this part of our browser, you'll be able to see we have the colors, each of the colors, right, all being represented as string, and they are all separated by commas. Now that's not actually what we want. We don't want that kind of we don't want the colors to be structured in that particular way. So for us to fix that real quick, what we could do here, we're just gonna make another variable. We could call this could be our route params, right? And it's just gonna be equal to the generate random colors. It generates random colors we have, because if you remember correctly, they are all in an array, right? So we could map through the values, right, since it's an array, and we'll have access to each of the colors, and we could just type this, say the color is just going to be a string. And what we want to do with the value is this: we just want to say each of our individual color, right, in each iteration, we just want to splice out the first value, splice 1, right? And once we're done with that, we just want to join back this particular value and join them by the string of dashes. So what we're saying here, we just want to map through the data, and we just want to map through the generate random color data, take out the hash, which is what we currently have here, right? Okay, so what this variable here is just doing for us is just to map through the data and splice the hash values we have here right now and join them back. And if we try logging, let's say console.log the route params, which is where we want to navigate the user to, which is going to be our dynamic page, right? Okay, so we are trying to log the route params and see what we currently have. So let's quickly go to the console and see what we currently have. Let's pull up our console here real quick and go back to our generate page right now. Okay, I think one thing we need to do, let's just take out the redirect again, where we are pushing the user to those dynamic pages. So we'll be able to see the values properly. Let's go back here and okay, let's go to localhost again. Okay, we have localhost 3000, start the generator, loads up, and we should be on the generate page. And being on this page, let's take a look at the console again. So right now the console just shows us this value, right? So we just have each of our color hex without the hashtags, and they are not separated by commas anymore. They are all separated by dashes. So this is a very comfortable structure we could use to route our users. So what we could do now is, since we already have this variable holding our routes, which is automatically our color, so we're just going to use this instead of the route params. And if you notice, the redirect happens very fast. So in the sense of, like, when you hit the generate page, once that particular component is done mounting, since we are using the use effect, the user is being routed to the new dynamic page. But we just want to show a particular view of the page loading, right? So for us to do that, we're just going to use set timeout, and we could just run set timeout here and save. Okay, our set timeout is just going to be a regular function, right? And this is just going to push the user to the dynamic URL in 2000 milliseconds, which is equivalent to 2 seconds. Yeah, let's refresh this page and take a look at what happens next. Okay, let's go back to the landing page. Okay, we're on the landing page. We hit the start generate, takes us to the dynamic page. Let's go back again. Okay, let's hit here again. All right, start the generator. Okay, let's make this for like 4000 milliseconds. Start the generator for 4 seconds before you be routed to the dynamic page. Yeah, amazing. So at this point, we have the dynamic page with each and every of our values here up in our browser here, right? So that's just one step. So we are taken to the dynamic page, and that is basically how we are gonna do it. Just take a recap of what we did. We generated a color with the random color libraries. We're generating 5 different random colors, right? And we're mapping through the values that are being created from this variable. We're mapping through the values, taking out the first value, which is the hashes, and we are joining the particular array again, joining them by dashes, right? So what we're doing here, we're just restructuring the data so we could use it for our need. And the next step is just to use a use effect that says when this particular component mounts, navigate the user to this new dynamic page based on the colors, right? And we are navigating the user on in 4 seconds. Once the user hits the page, after 4 seconds, the user will be routed to the next page. For us to continue, let's quickly take a look at the colors page, right? The place where our color playtest is being generated. Let's take a look and see how it looks like. So on desktop, what we just have here, we just have each of the values that we have here right now, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 colors. And we have some icons on top here. And let's quickly just work on this color part first. Okay, so let's go back to localhost, and we are on localhost, and we are on the dynamic page. Let's quickly open up VS Code and go to the dynamic page, which is this. Okay, so we are inside this particular page. Now the first thing we will have to do here, we have to have access to the particular params, because remember, based on this, these are all dynamic values, right, coming directly from the browser tab here, right? So we need to make sure that we're making use of the params directly to do this. Okay, so for us to do that, the first thing we need to do, we are gonna make sure that we have access to it. And for us to do that, Nextjs makes it very easy for us. We could just destructure the property out, and we're gonna call this params. And for TypeScript purposes, we could just type this and say our params, right? That's gonna be having the value of a slug, because if you remember, we named our dynamic page slug, and our slug is obviously always going to be a string. And let's see this. Okay, so we have this value. Now, just to show you a quick example of what we are trying to do here, let's just put in this value here. Let's say we just want to show our property value, which is props.slug. We want to show it on the page directly. Yeah, cool. And let's just put some style here to show. I just want to visualize what we're trying to achieve, right? Let's say this should be text-to-Excel, and take out our value and put it here. Now, if you preview it in the browser and go back to the home page, start the generator again, loads up and takes us to this page. So you see, we have dynamic values, and these are the same values that we have here. Cool. So that's the first step. So we having access to these values is just the first step of what we'll be doing here. So the next thing we need to do, we need to then use this value, which is coming from our props directly, right? And for us to do that, let's quickly come down here and say, okay, this is just gonna be, let's create a variable. We're gonna create a new variable. We could call this could be our generated colors, and our generated colors is just gonna hold our params dot slug, right? And we have an error. It says can't find name params. Actually, we can. Let's see what's the issue here. Function implementation immediately. Okay, let's take this out real quick. Let's fix this, and this should be returned. We're gonna return the JSX directly. Take out this guy, and okay, so the error should just be coming from here, and place this here, and I think our error should go away now. Cool. So we have a variable holding our generated colors, and the next thing we need to do here, we could just say on that variable could be called colors, and colors is just gonna be our generated colors, right? And if the generated colors exists, we're just gonna say generated colors dot split. We just want to split this, and we are gonna split out the dashes, right? The split method basically takes your string and turn them into substring, right? And it just returns an array. Now, so what I'm trying to do here now is I just want to take these values, which we already converted to a string right now, and convert it back to an array, so we could map through that value and show it on the page. Okay, so that being said, we're just going to create a new state, right? And first off, let's import useState from React. And the next step, we say create a new variable that's just going to be color platelets. So this particular useState is just going to be an array. Let's take this out. We don't need this. And it says we're having an error. I think this should be a React server component error. And to fix that, let's just go up here and say use client. Let's take out the IEN, yeah, client. The use client error should go away, and let's quickly refresh this page. Use client. Okay, cool. All right, we've been able to fix that. So let's say the next thing we need to do here again, we need to be able to use this value right now. So now we have an array. Like if you want to take a look and visualize what we currently have, we just have an array right now, an array containing all our colors. And if you look at the finished one, right, these are all showing on a particular row, right? Meaning that in a sense, you could say these are all an array that we are mapping just to show the different colors on the particular page. Okay, let's take this to the side again and go back to localhost. And the next thing we could do here, we could come into our component here and say, let's just create a new component, right? Our new component will be called, let's just call this is just going to serve for our each and individual platelet. So we're just going to say platelet, each and individual platelet. And inside our platelet, it's just going to be a regular component. And let's name this properly. This should be platelets. Let's take out the side. Okay. So this platelet is gonna hold some values for us right now, right? And for the meantime, let's just make this very simple as possible. Our platelet component is gonna accept some props, right? And we're just gonna say this particular component is gonna accept some props. First, it's gonna accept the color props. It's gonna accept the colors. It's gonna accept the log hex. It's also gonna accept the color index and the set color hexes. So these are all the values that we're going to be passing down to this particular platelet. And in a moment, this will all make sense. Okay. And for TypeScript reasons, let's also try to type this particular props are coming in here right now. Okay. And okay, so just to visualize this real quick, let's say we just want to show each individual color that will be shown here. Now let's go back to our page, our color page, right? And what we could do here, we could say we want to map through all our color platelets, right? And we'll say map, and mapping each of the values, we're just going to pass in individual colors, which should just be the color, and let's just take in the index too, which is just going to be a number. Okay, this should be just be a number, and we just want to return our component here, right? And the component we're returning is our platelets. Okay, and yeah, let's format this real quick and see what we currently have here. It says property map does not exist on type string. Okay, so now the reason why that will happen right now is because we haven't typed this particular value we are mapping here right now, because we're just taking the colors from here and we are adding the colors to this use state as the default state. Okay, so for now, before we try to focus on the TypeScript part, let's just pass in color, right? So color will just be equal to each individual color that is inside our variable, is inside our array. And we could also say passing the key is just going to be color. For now, our color index, right, which we'll be using later, it's also going to be equals to index. And we need to pass in all our colors, which we'll be using on the later part. It's just going to be equal to colors. Now, colors is the variable that we have here right now, which holds all our values directly. Okay, I think, okay, this should be colors. Yeah, that error should go away now. What's this? Okay, cool. The same TypeScript error we have here. So let's quickly fix this TS error. So we're just gonna type this real quick. We're gonna say this colors, right? Colors variable could just be, at the point it's gonna be undefined, right? And then once we have the value, this is gonna be a string of array of strings. And okay, and this could just be any. Yeah, I think I won't advise you using any when you're working with TS, but like, so we could actually move on with this. And yeah, so if you add any, the error goes away, and we still have some errors here. It says some of the values are not being passed down, right? I think we'll definitely work on that in the coming chapters. Okay, go up here, let's take out this log. We don't need this log anymore. We have our values, we have all our colors. Okay, cool. That's a good step. And let's quickly move into the platelet and focus on working on that part. So since we have each individual platelet, which is this, we could start thinking about how we're going to style this. And for us to style this particular values, what we could do here, we're just going to say, let's create a, right? Okay, I think we could just use this one. We have a div, and we're just going to add a class of like width.full, height-large, flex row reverse. And so in a minute we'll see why we need this. And one last thing we could do here, we're just going to say style our background color, right? The background color of this particular div, since this particular component is inside an iteration, right? We're just going to set it to to a variable we're gonna call this variable color instance. Yeah, and we haven't created it yet. Color instance, and okay, so let's quickly create this variable up here, because you know in CSS, right, when you're working with hex values, your hex values has to have the hash, right, in the beginning of the particular color. If you look at let me quickly show that again. Okay, I think we could just take this out for now. I just want to explain what we're trying to do next. Okay, cool. If you look at these values, right, we have just the hex values without the hash, and CSS won't be able to identify or be able to interpret the colors for us, right, on the browser. So for us to be able to tell CSS that we want these values to just be hex values, we're just going to create a new state, and we will just quickly import. Okay, so we're just going to quickly import useState from React, and what we're doing here is we're creating a new state, say color instance, and we are adding the hash, right, to that particular state, so that way each and every of our color that has been passed down as props, right, will just be represented as hashes, right, and we could directly use that value on our background. Now let's set this, and cool, let's make this wide. Okay, cool. Now if you take a look at what we have right now, we have our hashes with our background colors. So far so good. That's making sense. Okay, so I think at this point what we still need to do, we need to do more of the styling, and for us to style this properly, let's go back to the parents. Okay, let's quickly go back to the parents, and this should be this part, and let's break this down. So platelets should have a parent over here, right, and the parent is just going to define some values here. So let's quickly say we want another div, and this div value, we're going to change it in a while, but like for now, let's just make this look good. We're going to say we want flex, right, we want the values to be flexed. And if you look at this now, we have this because this is the parent, right, so we want them flex, and let's just add some breakpoints here. So when it's large, we want this to be flex of column, and I think that should be flex of row, since it's just going to be on a row. Then we'll say flex dash column and width dash full, then height dash width dash full and height dash screen. Okay, so we say this should be a width of full and height of screen, right? And with that, if we take a look at what we currently have in the browser, let's make this wider. Okay, we just have our columns 1 2 3 4 5, and yeah, I could say this is looking good so far, and it's also responsive, right, thanks to doing breakpoints, right? Okay, so we still have more styling to be done here. Okay, so one more thing we could do here, we could quickly say we want to style these values, because if you look at the already finished one, right, we have the colors, right, on a row, and we also have some icons, and we have some text, the way we place the text, and we're doing some conversion here. We're doing some color conversion and some other logics on a particular color platelet directly. Okay, so for us to do that, I think let's just quickly style this part. Let's just style this text. So let's go back here and take this down here and go into each and individual platelet. We have the color here right now. Okay, so for us to kind of manipulate the color right now, because if you look here, we have the color name, and we have the color name, and for us to get the color name, I'll just show you guys how we're gonna do that, and that should be pretty much straightforward to do. And okay, for us to get the color name, what we could quickly do here, we're going to make use of the library. If you remember from the beginning, we installed a particular library, right, which is called Colorod, and that's what we're going to be using to like get the particular name of the colors we have here, since you already have the hexes values, right? So we're going to say import this from this should be for Colorod, and I think I just want to open up documentation again, so we'll take a look and see this, and this should be, let's take a look at this. So it says it's just a tiny yet powerful tool for high performance color manipulation and conversion, and we're just going to use the values. I think it also has some plugins you could use to work with this. So now if you see this, we have colors, right, provide options to convert a color into a CSS color name and vice versa. I think this is what we're going to use at that point. This is what we're going to use right now. So we already imported this. I think let's just take this real quick and go back to VS Code, and I think go back to VS Code and say just want to import this guy, and we also want to import the name plugin. And once we're done importing the name plugin, right, Let's also see how they did it here. We have to extend the particular name plugin inside our component before we can make use of it. And for us to do that, let's just say, I think we're gonna do outside. Yeah, let's just do it outside. And at this point, we could actually get the name of each and every color we currently have here. Okay, so make it easier and make it easier. I think what I'm gonna do here, I'm just gonna create a function, right? And I'm just gonna call this function is just gonna have a name, right? And then our color name is gonna take in, okay, this is gonna be a function obviously, and this function is gonna return our color, right? Our color library. Then the color library is gonna take in a particular value. So we could just call this hex, not taking our hex value, and the hex is gonna be coming from this part. And once we have the hex, we're gonna go to name. We want this function to return the name, and yeah, I think we're cool with this. Now, this is a function we could just use directly down in our JSX, right? But for simplicity, we could just say, create a new variable here, say color name. It's just gonna be equal to our function, and we're just gonna pass in the value of our color instance. If you remember, we already have our color instance, right? Which is just our direct color that's coming from our props. And we just type this real quick. It's always gonna be a string, obviously. And let's go up here and see color name and color name. Yeah, so we can now say, okay, take color name and show color name down here, and show color name. Okay, cool. Okay, so if you see what we currently have here, the library is returning black. The library is saying, okay, all our colors are black, which is at this point, which is wrong, right? Because not all our color is basically black. Now, to debug this, we just need to understand that there's a mismatch between our values, because if you remember, the colors, this color directly is just coming as a string without our hashes, right? And that was why we created an instance, right, where we are using the hashes directly and we're using on the background. So the library cannot actually identify what color it is, so we're going to use the right value. So instead of using the color without our hashes, we are going to use color instance here, and color instance, and we can't see any color name here right now. Let's go back to the library. So it says undefined if the color is not specified in CSS specs, right? And for us to get the particular color, we just have to pass in closest to true. Okay, so let's quickly do that. Let's go up here and say, okay, since the color is not available for most of the colors we have here right now, let's just say closest should just be true. So closest to true, and once closest is true, we should be able to see some color names. Yeah, cool. Let's see if we could style this real quick, right? Okay, so we could just make a paragraph, and we're gonna say our paragraph is just gonna be this, and we just have to put this particular icon just to represent, that says, oh, this is something similar to the particular color name. Okay, so let's format this properly and see what we currently have now. Let's visualize this properly. Cool, we have dark gray. Let's go back to our home page and generate a new color so we could see this. So let's start the generator again, and we can see the particular color that is being shown. Okay, so I think the next step of what we need to do, let's continue styling this properly.